Okay, so to reorient ourselves, we are talking about the CMMS. The CMMS is the heart of an asset reliability program, and we've got two goals in what we're doing here. Number one, we're going to describe the asset hierarchy that resides within the CMMS, which is a really critical way to configure everything, and I'll explain each of the entities that exists inside of the asset hierarchy. And then at the end, a really important thing is we'll learn that the reliability world uses different language than the Industry 4.0 world. In the Industry 4.0 world, you'll hear about semantic hierarchies as a subset of the UNS. We typically don't use that language on the asset management side. However, we're talking about nearly the same constructs. So I'm going to circle to that at the end. But for right now, let's focus purely on the CMMS. So your mission is to configure your CMMS in the most fruitful way possible. These are the entities that you need to know about. First of all, we're looking at functional locations, asset records, and item records. These are the three entities that reside inside of the software system, and let's understand what each of those is. I want you to think of the functional location as a drill down hierarchy that identifies where the machine that you're working on is inside of the factory or the process plant. So it typically starts with a site or an enterprise level, goes down through the plant, down through the line, and eventually you land on a machine skid where you can actually see, for example, a pump and a motor directly on the same skid. Everything from the enterprise level all the way down to the machine skid is typically called a functional location. The reason it's called a functional location is that it's identifying the function of the machine, but importantly, you wouldn't call a work order against a functional location. You would call it against an asset. So inside of the functional location, they're really just a shell. It's a drill down hierarchy that organizes your assets in a logical way, but they have relatively little information themselves inside. So that's the idea behind a functional location. Now, asset records. Asset records, we're getting directly into the meat of the physical assets that you're going to be working on. So asset records are typically things like pumps, compressors, motors, sometimes the coupling or the gearbox that connects the two of those. Those are asset records. The type of information that we need on the asset record is all of the technical specifications or the nameplate details about that asset. Because now, for the asset, this is where we're launching our work orders, so we need to know literally what is the make, what is the model, what type of bearing is it using, what is the size, all of the specifications that you would typically find stamped on the side of it, on the nameplate. You would call this the nameplate. So if you were to go up to the side of a motor, 99 times out of 100, you'll see a literal metal tag stamped on the side, and it has the NEMA size and the voltage and the current and all of the specs that you would need about a motor in order to do work on it. So that's the asset record. But importantly, especially if your CMMS resides within your ERP, there is one layer beneath the asset record, which is called an item record. Now, the item record is a procurable item. So if I think of the pump as the overall asset, underneath of the pump, I'm going to have things like a mechanical seal, a shaft, an impeller, the key for the shaft that holds the impeller in place, sometimes a coupling. Every single time you'll have some type of gasketing that goes along with it. Those are all item records. And so whenever you hear the word item record, I want you to think that is a procurable item, which means that on that record, you're going to have not only the technical details about exactly what make and model that item is, but also who your standard vendor is for that. And so the world of procurement lives at the item record level. That's what they care about because that's what they're procuring to get you the gaskets and the bearings and the key replacements and a new shaft and a new impeller and whatever else you need to be able to complete your repair. So the moment you think asset hierarchy, I want you to remember those three types of entities. Functional locations are simply drill downs that get you to the asset record in some meaningful way so that you understand what system you're working on. The asset record has a lot of detail about that individual pump or motor or compressor because you want to know specifically what model you have installed and what the horsepower is, the design ratings, things like that. The item record is where you're finally at the level that you can procure this directly from your procured vendor from somebody that's already on your AVL or your approved vendor list inside of your ERP. And so the goal of the asset hierarchy inside of a CMMS is to set all of that context up so that on the back end, when you want to do analysis about where is your maintenance programming being effective or not, you have all kinds of rich data that you can analyze to see where the dollars and where the headcount and the hours of your maintenance technicians are flowing. That's why the asset hierarchy exists in the first place. When configured properly like this, it makes it a piece of cake to